Hello Year 3, as you might be able to spot, I am back at school and it's very, very strange being here without you, but I hope you're all doing okay. For our read aloud this week, we're going to carry on with the magic Faraway tree and we are on Chapter 7, Mr. Changeabout and the Enchanter. Everyone stared at Mr. Changeabout. At least, as he was the only person in the room, they thought that was who it must be. He got up and came towards them. He was a fat, comfortable-looking person with a broad smile on his face. What a lot of visitors, he said. Do sit down. There was nowhere to sit except on the stone floor, which looked rather cold, so nobody sat down. Something happened to Mr. Changeabout when nobody obeyed him. He grew tall and thin. His broad smile disappeared and a frown came all over his face. He looked a very unpleasant person. "Sit down," he roared, and everybody sat down in a hurry. Mr. Changeabout looked at the saucepan man who had sat down with a tremendous clatter. "Have you got a nice little kettle that would boil enough water to make two mugs of hot chocolate?" he asked. The saucepan man didn't hear, so Joe shouted in his ear and he beamed, got up and undid a little kettle that he had on him. "Just the thing," he said, handing it to Mr. Changeabout. "Try it and see." Mr. Changeabout changed again and became happy-looking with dancing eyes and a sweet smile. He took the kettle. "Thank you," he said. "So kind of you. Just what I wanted. How much is it?" "Nothing at all," said the saucepan man. "A present for you." "Well, allow me to hand round some chocolate to you all in return for such a nice present," said Mr. Changeabout. And he fetched an enormous box of chocolates from a cupboard. Everybody was pleased. Rick looked carefully into the box when his turn came, his hand stretched out for the very biggest chocolate of all. Mr. Changeabout at once changed again and flew into a rage. He became thin and mean-looking, his nose shot out long, and his eyes grew small. "Bad boy, greedy boy," he shouted. "You shan't have any of my chocolates now. Horrible greedy children." And at once all the chocolates changed into little hard stones. Beth had hers in her mouth and she spat it out at once. The others looked disgusted. The old saucepan man gave a yell. "I've swallowed mine, and now I suppose I've got a stone inside me. Oh, you nasty Mr. Changeabout, I'll show you what I think of your chocolates." And to everybody's surprise, Saucepan rushed at Mr. Changeabout, knocked his box of chocolates all over the room and began to shake him hard. Rattle, rattle, shake, shake. Gosh, how the old saucepan man shook Mr. Changeabout, and Mr. Changeabout tried to shake Saucepan man back. But what was the good of that? Saucepan was so covered in pots and pans that nobody could possibly shake him about without hurting themselves. Clang, clatter, clash. The kettles and saucepans made an enormous noise, and everyone began to laugh, because really, Saucepan looked too funny for words dancing about on the floor, pushing and shaking Mr. Changeabout. Mr. Changeabout suddenly got very big and fierce looking, but only Saucepan didn't seem to mind at all. He just went on shaking and pushing at him, and shouted, "The bigger you are, the more there is to punish." So then Mr. Changeabout got very small as a mouse, and ran squealing across the floor in fright. Quick as lightning, Saucepan picked him up, popped him into a kettle, and put the lid on. "Oh, Saucepan, whatever will you do next?" said Joe, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. "I've never seen a funnier sight in my life. Be careful, Mr. Changeabout doesn't squeeze out of the spout." "I'll stuff it with paper," said Saucepan, tearing some from the box of chocolates. Now he's secure. "Well, what do we do next?" "We'd better get out of here," said Joe, standing up. He turned towards the doorway, but what was this? There was no doorway and no door, only a wall of rock that ran all around the underground room now. "Oh no, how do we get out?" said Joe, puzzled. "This is a very magic kind of place." "There's no window, of course, because we are underground," said Rick. "What are we going to do?" "What about the chimney?" asked Franny, running to the fire. "It looks pretty big. Perhaps we could put the fire out and climb up." "Well, that looks like our only chance of getting out of here," said Joe. He looked round for some water to put out the fire. He saw a water pump on the wall and went to it. He put a bucket underneath and pumped the handle up and down. The water was bright green and soon filled the bucket. Joe threw it onto the fire. It made a terrific sizzling noise and went out at once, puffing clouds of green smoke into the room. Joe stepped on the dead fire and looked up the chimney. "There's an iron ladder going right up," he called in excitement. "Come on, we'll get dirty, but we can't help that. Hurry before any more mysterious things happen." He went up the ladder. It was hot from the heat of the fire, but grew colder as the higher he went. "What a long chimney," called back Joe. "Is everyone coming?" "Yes, yes," called 6 voices behind him. Joe climbed steadily upwards. At last the ladder came to an end. Joe clambered over the top of it and found himself in a creepy place. And we'll find out about that creepy place next time. Bye.